So it was a Saturday night. It was in May. It was springtime, little drizzle rain, when I heard a call come out of a man trespassing in somebody's backyard.
The homeowner was in bed and he had one of those Ring cameras, and it alerted him on his phone that there was motion on his back porch. So they sent me and Corporal Reyes to the call, and as we walked up, I announced that we were Denver police and asked that anybody on the patio make themselves known.
And then that's when I heard a loud bang, a big flash, and I could feel heat coming my direction. I heard Marcus scream in pain. He immediately fell to my left.
I remember Brandon returning fire over the top of me.
But I knew at this point that he got out of that area. He took off running somewhere. So from there, I looked back to Marcus. I realized this isn't a safe place. I grabbed Marcus under his shoulders and I drug him to where I could help assess his injuries. There was another officer that arrived on scene. She immediately got on the air and started relaying the information that we had. As I looked down at Marcus, I could see blood coming out from his right thigh. So I took my knife out and I immediately cut his pants right above his shin and began to rip them all the way up and cut them all the way up to his hip. As I did that, I noticed a femoral spurt coming out of his thigh. I took my tourniquet out, slid it as high up as I could. From there, I tightened it down, I cinched it, and the bleeding stopped. It was at that point when the paramedics arrived that I knew that he was gonna be okay. Working side by side with the Denver Paramedics, we have a great relationship, and I know that I can trust them with any kind of situation that we're involved in. So it was a huge sigh of relief for me to have them show up on scene and be the ones to essentially take care of Marcus, my friend.
We noticed a bunch of cops driving Emergent down the freeway, and that's when we got the call for a officer-involved shooting. In the details, it said, officer was shot, suspect is not secured, and the scene is still kind of unsafe. So they kind of generally recommend us to stage. And I remember Justin and I both were like, we're not staging. And Justin even did some really remarkable driving to get past the police barricade to get to Officer Black.
And so we ended up getting on scene. Jesse, hopped out of the passenger seat and went straight over to Officer Black, who was on the ground.
He was pale, diaphoretic. You could see a large pool of blood around his right leg, and a tourniquet had already been applied. Initially had his eyes closed, which is, again, pretty scary, and then I couldn't feel a pulse. So I remember just kind of screaming his name, and he was able to open his eyes from that point. And that's when Justin showed up with the stretcher, and we were able to just kind of pick him up and throw him on the stretcher and get him into the ambulance at that point.
Calls like that, we're always taught that we needed to be quick. We have to get on scene and get out of scene. The best thing that we can do for anybody that has a gunshot is to get them to the hospital as quickly as possible. So in that case, we were lucky to have Lieutenant Eric Gillis show up on scene, kind of coordinate some of the outside operational things that allowed us to get off scene and get transporting quickly to the hospital.
Can't remember the exact times, but they had close to a 1-minute scene time, which is phenomenal for a situation like this, considering how severe his injuries were.
His initial set of vital signs were not very great. So it was just a matter of getting the Denver Health ready for kind of his arrival, and then stabilizing as much as I could, while Justin did a spectacular job driving to the hospital.
As we're driving to the hospital, there was other police officers and cars that would come up and pass us and block off intersections so that we could go through without having to slow down at all. And we essentially got an entire police escort all the way from the scene of the call all the way to Denver Health.
Making that decision to just go straight to the scene, not knowing whether or not the shooter was still there. He could have been lying in wait for them to injure more officers, to injure the paramedics. The fact that they made that decision, I think it speaks volumes about their character and their commitment to, taking care of anybody, but specifically taking care of somebody that we consider a brother in public safety.
The really remarkable thing about this call is I think everything went perfect. And it's nice to be involved in that chain and know that, you did your job correctly and helped benefit a fellow first responder.
So it turns out the weapon I was shot with was a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun from approximately 10 to 15 feet away. The shotgun wound severed my femoral arteries. I have birdshot in both of my legs. Both testicles were ruptured. Basically hit from the waistline to just above my knees with birdshot. 2.5 weeks in the hospital. During that time, I underwent 5 surgeries, 56 units of blood, probably 250 stitches and staples, and here we are.
We do this job because we truly love taking care of people. We truly love medicine and truly love being part of the team that is Denver Public Safety. It means a lot that when we run a call that is an officer that's shot, that a call that we'll probably live with and remember for the rest of our lives, that have a little token of appreciation and something that remind us that we did really good that day.
It just means more than I can even say.